Hey guys, so what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be talking about dirt. Yes, we're going to be talking about soil. Now, I know some of you guys are like, it's dirt, so what? But one of the things I want to make sure we're starting to understand, if you haven't already caught on, is that dirt is our natural resource that makes kind of Iowa unique and allows us to be successful in the agricultural world, as well as helping us to go ahead and prevent pollution from being worse than already is. And so we're going to be taking a look at dirt for several different reasons. Let's get started. So one of the things I want to make sure we're clear on is that we've been focusing on the outside part of Earth, which is the layer called the crust. And the crust is made up of two components. It's made up of the bedrock, which is the rock that makes the actual crust surface. The crust is actually solid rock. But then oftentimes we're not necessarily touching the rock that is our bedrock. So oftentimes we have soil that covers up that bedrock. And so we really need to make sure we understand the soil, because it's something that we build our houses on, we build our different architecture on, as well as it's what the first thing that rainwater comes in contact with before it gets down into our aquifers or our karst kind of systems. So we want to make sure that we understand this component and how it helps us in many ways. So one of the things I want to make sure we start understanding is that there's benefits to soil. It also provides habitat, as well as that growing media. For example, sandy soil. You want to make sure you're thinking about how to go ahead and build on a sandy soil versus a soil that's made of clay. There's different components, and so that's something that we have to also understand and take that into account when we build. Some of the other benefits that maybe are not as blaring obvious are the fact that soil helps us with the types of gases. It retains a lot of the gases, so like methane, it absorbs the methane, it absorbs some of the other gases like carbon dioxide that it could be released in the air, which would cause us to have more of a global warming effect. So the fact that the soil allows that component of it's able to absorb a lot of the gases is extremely important. It does emit gases as well, but we want to make sure we understand that it absorbs a lot of the gases that could be harmful. In addition, it helps purify our water. So it absorbs our water. So if we have a lot of runoff and everything else, we want that soil to be there because it helps absorb some of that water. But it also helps purify. And that's one of the extremely important things that we're going to eventually look at. When we talk about purifying, we're talking about its act as a filter. It starts to filter as the sediments and starts the material, the water, the polluted water and everything else starts to go and travel through our soil. It acts as a filter, and so it starts taking out some of those pollutants. So if we have really good soil that's really thick, really rich, it has lots of different types of minerals, it has lots of different types of layers of soil, it helps us actually filter out the bad stuff. Now if we have really poor soil, or if we have a very thin soil layer, then it's not going to help filter. And so it's really important that we understand our horizons. And so we're going to be looking at profiles of the soil, and one of the things that we make sure you understand the profile is talking about the different horizons or the different layers of our soil. Now the first layer, it's called the O layer, and it is really talking about our organic layer. It's where we have the humus. So we're talking about the dead plants, we're talking about the decaying material that's happening, so we have lots of microbes that are in that layer that are going ahead and breaking down a lot of that plant material. And it's where we get a lot of our nutrients that then go into our A horizon, which is our topsoil. So topsoil is extremely important. That's the part that's really productive for us, that allows us to be able to have really rich crops and allowing us to be able to grow our crops. It's our rich layer of our soil. And that's extremely important for us to understand, that we used to have a lot of topsoil, but this layer keeps getting smaller and smaller. And so it's where we oftentimes have our humus that goes ahead and starts to go ahead and provides the nutrients for our plants. This is where we a lot of times see many of our plants and our animals living in this area. And so it's something that's extremely important that we need to make sure we take into account, that it's takes a long time to go ahead and rebuild. Now, right underneath our topsoil is our subsoil. And oftentimes subsoil, it doesn't necessarily have as much organic matter unless it's not been disturbed. If it hasn't been disturbed for a long period of time, that actual subsoil or B layer can actually become topsoil. But nowadays, the way that we use our soil here in Iowa, the subsoil is definitely not our enriching into our topsoil because we're activating and we're cultivating it too much. So oftentimes the subsoil has little organic matter, but it's rich in minerals. So oftentimes this is where we start to have leaching start to occur. Materials start to go from A down into B. And so this is extremely important because it is mineral rich, and that large plant roots can get down into that area. And that's extremely important for us to understand. So C is where we start to have our parent material. And this is basically where our soil started to develop at the very beginning. And typically what you start to see as the horizon, you start to see a color change. And so C will typically be a little bit lighter in color as we continue to move down. And we'll start to see some possible bigger deposits of rock and that type of stuff in our C horizon, our parent material. Typically our parent material, it's minerals are starting to deplenish. There's not as many minerals as in B. And then lastly, we have R, which is our bedrock. This is actually not soil. It's actually the mass of rock that our soil sits on top of. But it's important for us to be able to identify our bedrock because it helps us then kind of gauge how thick is our actual layers of our soil. So it's important to make sure we can kind of identify the bedrock, which is the mass of rock that it's sitting on. It could be limestone, it could be sandstone, it could be granite, it could be basalt, it could be lots of different types of rocks depending on where you're at in your location, but we definitely need to make sure we understand that it's a rock. It's our bedrock, and which our soil is actually on top of. That's something that you need to make sure you have written down for class. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking a look at our actual profile of our soil in Iowa, our soil in Kelowna, as well as around surrounding areas to help us start to understand how it actually helps us filter and how we can start going ahead and using that information to help us educate our community about what we need to do to make sure that we retain good quality water for our groundwater. So make sure you're ready to go, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.